Welcome to Nausea Reviews. This is Brian, your host, and this is the actual first episode. We're doing it on Castle Freak from 1995, and the director and screenwriter is Stuart Gordon, and the crew, well, the notable crew for me would be half the band family, because if you're like me, you like yourself some Puppet Master, and Charles' family is part of it. Also, the two actors, actor and actress, that I cared about were Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton. And it's like a giant reunion because all of these people have worked on Reanimator and From Beyond. And the other thing is that they're all adaptations of H.P. Lovecraft. And this one is an adaptation of The Outsider, which I've never read or listened to or anything like that. But apparently Stuart Gordon really liked to make H.P. Lovecraft adaptations. I've only seen 2, but this makes at least 3. This gives me high hopes for Castle Freak because I love Reanimator, and From Beyond is real fun to watch if you're in the mood for some weird sexual stuff, but that's how the filmmakers decided to adapt it. Now, I should probably go watch Castle Freak a couple of times so I can finish this episode. Alright, so I've watched Castle Freak twice now, and I'd have to say, for a synopsis, well, the title really says it. There's a castle, there's a freak in it, terrorizes the people that live in the castle. Alright, so from a reviewer standpoint, I can only see maybe 3 redeemable qualities in this movie, and that would be Jeffrey Combs, Barbara Crampton, and everything that gets set up, or basically everything that gets set up, has a payoff in the end somewhere, or somewhere down the line, whether it's right away or like way later. So I'm sure it would get real bad reviews. But now, I liked the movie, but I was scared in the beginning because it's a full moon picture, and it looks like a full moon picture, and the opening scene kind of sounded like a full moon picture. It was just, I was worried. But once we got past that opening scene and the credits were over, it was much, much better. But I'd have to give you guys, before we go into the overview of the movie, I need to have like a trigger warning right here, because there's some, we're going to call it gratuitous rape scene and some incest, pedophilia, molestation going on. And in context, it's not that bad. It doesn't seem like it's just there for shock value. When I get into the overview, I'll explain more when it gets to those points in the movie. But that's really all. That's a warning. So if you don't like that kind of stuff, this isn't the movie for you. So here we go. Spoilers from now on. I'm just going to go through the movie with the notes that I took while I watched it. So it opens up with this old lady making food. And there's a cat. That's important for later. And it's real bad. It's like old salami and a slice of bread. And then she goes to, we're going to call it a dungeon because it's in a castle. Kind of looks like it could be. And then she opens the door and you see a figure on the ground. He's chained to the wall. And she picks up a barbed cat of 9 tails. And if you don't know what that is, it's like 9 whips in one. This one has blades on it. And she just whips and whips for no discernible reason. Doesn't even say anything, just whips. And then she starts to have I'm going to call it a heart attack. Seems like a heart attack. She starts to have one. Before she leaves, she closed the door and slides the food under there for the person that she was whipping. And then she gets to her bed and dies. And then it goes a little, shows that she's been there for a little bit, moldy bread, things like that. And that's the opener. And like I said, it's pretty poor quality. She's bad as an actress. There's only like 3 people that are good actors in this movie. She's not one of them. But she's the Duchess of this castle. And then there's these long, boring credits. Like, in Reanimator, there was like a slideshow of a bunch of pretty looking things. In this one, it's just black with text. Now, the music I like, but I like Full Moon's music, like in Puppet Master, and in the other two movies I talked about earlier with Stuart Gordon. I like the way the music goes. But other than that, it's just black screen. But then there's a shot that I like. I don't know if it is actually good, but they're coming through a tunnel, so you just see the light, and then there's the light. And that introduces us to the family that gets this castle, and it's Jeffrey Combs is the dad, Barbara Crampton is the mom. She's overprotective of the daughter named Becky. I don't know what the actress's name is, but I'm going to be calling those two by their real names. It's easier to keep track in my head. We also see the driver, who turns out to be Jeffrey Combs' lawyer, once again, important later. And they finally get to the house, and they're going through some rooms, and they see all these horrific skull paintings. Well, I don't know about horrific, but some of them are pretty, they're just supposed to be creepy. I guess it makes sense with the theme. And then we meet the housekeeper, who is the sister of the lawyer, and she looks like a stereotypical stern, mean housekeeper, but as we get into the movie, she's pretty awesome. She's my third favorite character in the whole movie. And then the housekeeper tells them which rooms are which, and we learn that the marriage between Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton is rocky. And the next scene, we see Barbara taking pills. I'm assuming they're antidepressants. And then that explains the rocky marriage. Jeffrey Combs was a drunk. He's been sober for 9 months, but Barbara Crampton can't forgive him for what happened. And then we get to see what happens, because Jeffrey Combs has a flashback/dream sequence. He's drunk, driving the car. He's got Becky and their son with them, and he gets distracted. The kid's name is JJ, because he dropped a Game Boy or whatever, and he's trying to get it. And there's an accident. He crashes the car. It blinds Becky with glass shards in her eyes. Pretty good effects. And her eye makeup in general is pretty good, I think. JJ dies in that accident. You don't get to see the kid die, which I appreciate, because I don't like seeing that. But there's unnerving crying. It is amazing how much that just is icky feeling inside of you. But then he wakes up to, he hears moaning, but it's labored, painful moaning. Then he looks around the house, going through everywhere. He finds the wine cellar, and he almost loses his sobriety chip, but he gets control, breaks the bottle he picked up, but it cuts his hand. So then he's going to wash his hand, and he runs into the housekeeper in the middle of the night. And then she gives the backstory of the Duchess's son, who was 5 when he died. His name is Jojo. JJ Jojo. I don't know about that. So he died at 5. Then next scene, Jeffrey Combs is going to take inventory because they want to liquidate the castle so they can make some money. Because he's related to the Duchess, and when she died, he was the only heir. So they go to the master bedroom, find the cat of nine tails under the bed because the old lady took it with her during her heart attack. And then Jeffrey Combs is looking around for loot, or booty as he says, and he finds a photo album, and that takes up his entire concentration. He's just staring at it. And Becky hears some kind of scratching, but Jeffrey Combs doesn't pay attention because he's enthralled with these pictures, because he's having some problems with, the nightmare he had the night before. So Becky finally wanders off trying to find that sound. Turns out it's a kitty cat, the same cat from the beginning. And then she follows the cat down, down, down. And then Combs finally realizes that she's gone, and and then he goes to look for a while. Then she falls on the ground, which overprotective mom's going to freak out about that later. Becky finds the cell that Jojo is in. Spoiler alert. She runs off because she gets scared because she thinks she hears a person. The parents find her. It starts an argument because Becky scraped her knee a little bit and Jeffrey Combs was supposed to watch. So Barbara's like, hey, remember when you were drunk? This is the same thing. And he's like, dude, it's fine. And then Jojo eats the cat, but they don't show him eat the cat. And then he rips off his own thumb to pull off the shackle on one of his hands and escape the cell. Becky and Barbara fight about her blindness because she wants her mom to back the fuck off because she needs to live her life. There's a really awkward dinner where the housekeeper is trying to be endearing, but rocky marriage makes it complicated. And then Jojo finds a mirror, sees what he looks like because he hasn't seen a mirror in 5 years or in 40 years, according to the story earlier. He breaks it. They all try to figure out why it broke. They can't figure it out. And then it's that night, Jojo is just walking through Becky's room while she's sleeping. And he's kind of being creepy, not going to lie. And remember, they're related. And she's like 15, I think. And he's 45. So that's where some of that creepy stuff comes in. He runs off and takes a sheet with him for some reason. And then Combs runs around trying to find him, but he's got like 100 in stealth because he's got this sheet and he acts like a piece of furniture. I don't know how somebody that has no skills whatsoever knows how to hide like a chair, but he does. And then Jeffrey Combs finds the crypt of this castle, or whatever you want to call it, and he finds Jojo's coffin, and the picture looks just like their son. He starts to freak out. So they call the cops because now they believe her. They believe Becky that somebody is in the house and they want the cops to look around. The cops don't take them seriously. The castle's too big. They're like, we're not going to do that. So that starts a pissing match between Jeffrey Combs and the police. And it's this main police guy. I don't know his name because half this movie is in Italian with no subtitles. So sometimes it's hard to know what's going on. Then, after that, Jeffrey Combs takes Barbara to the crypt to look at the picture because he's freaking out. And the picture's gone because Jojo took it because it's his picture. And it starts this giant fight where Barbara blames Jeffrey for the death of the son and blinding the daughter. And all the while, the daughter still loves Jeffrey, doesn't blame him for anything throughout this whole movie. It's all Barbara. But I get it to a certain extent. Her son died. But he's the one that killed her and lost a son, so he's going through some shit too. But this causes Jeffrey Combs to break, essentially. 9 months sobriety is about to go down the drain. He's about to jump off the top of the castle, and he just can't do it. But then it like hard cuts to him in the bar, breaks his streak, and just starts drinking and drinking and drinking. And then sometime later, it doesn't really say, but daytime to nighttime, this prostitute starts hitting on him, and he is like almost blackout drunk at this point. He has an altercation with the cop in the bar because the cop and the hooker have a connection. So then he takes her down to the wine cellar because he's so drunk he's not done. And there's a sex scene I've never seen a movie where it shows somebody going that far into a crotch with their face. That's all I'm going to say about that. But Jojo wanders in and starts watching. And I thought he was masturbating to this. It's just, I don't know, that's the only thing I could come up with on why he would watch the way that he did. But then Jeffrey Combs finishes, instant regret. He realizes that he just cheated on his wife and is drunk at the same time and tells the hooker to leave. On her way out, though, Jojo nabs her with the sheet. It's like super powered sheet. And then the next day, the cops are looking for the prostitute. When Jeffrey Combs is being questioned, then Barbara learns that he cheated on her and was drinking, and that causes the most amount of discourse between them. But then we get one of the harder scenes to watch. Jojo stole the hooker on her way out and has her chained up to him with the other side of the chain that he ripped his thumb off for. She tries to get out of it the only way that she knows how, which is seduction, just to get him off so she can get away. The problem is he's been, I'm going to call it reverse castrated. The worst kind of castration, because his dick's cut off, but he's still got his testicles, and that's a whole lot of testosterone that you can't relieve. It's, if you gotta castrate your kids or your husband or something, just take the balls. Don't do the dick. Now, Jojo saw what Jeffrey Combs did, and he's just trying to replicate it, but he uses his teeth instead of his lips, and you can imagine what happens after that. It cuts to the next scene because that's horrific. So then he's talking to his lawyer because they're going to try to blame him for the hooker's disappearance. And we know that Jeffrey Combs didn't do anything except, pay for services. But everybody has, according to the lawyer. And then the housekeeper finds her handbag, talks over the phone with her brother. Jeffrey Combs gets blackmailed by his lawyer because he's going to cover up this scandal. It's just not a good time. And to coerce Jeffrey Combs, he tells the true backstory of the Duchess. And that's that his dad left her for the Duchess's sister, and he's a bastard. because they never were married. And then the housekeeper hears the moaning of the prostitute, hears screaming from her, and then Jojo just beats her to death with the chain, and it's pretty sad because I like that housekeeper. She didn't do nothing wrong. Barbara Crampton and Becky are going to leave because everybody would in that situation, just got cheated on, broke his sobriety. Makes sense to me. Now he might be he's a suspect in murder. The cops say they can't leave because of all this. Jeffrey Combs pretty much figures out what's going on. He goes in and gets the coffin, and the cops come, and he breaks the coffin open, and there's just rocks. So the Duchess was trying to punish Jeffrey Combs' father through torturing their son Jojo. Jojo never did anything wrong. He was just a kid, but now he's a monster because he was tortured for 40 years, and that's all he knows, so he doesn't know anything. And then they pretty much arrest Jeffrey Combs, but they're walking around and they find the hooker and the lawyer's dead sister. No Jojo, though, so Jeffrey Combs is arrested. They leave cops on watch for Barbara Crampton and Becky. She asks for a glass of water because everybody in this movie is on some kind of drug. Pills for Becky's headaches because of her eyes. The first cop that goes gets murdered because we're in the murdery part of this movie now. And then it cuts to Combs being questioned. There's a part where there's ADR, and I just want to comment on it because Jeffrey Combs had the right intensity and said what his character was saying, but the background noises are just flat. It doesn't sound particularly great, but at least he has the same intensity. I have bad ADR in this podcast right now, so I can't really complain too much. Barbara asks the cop number 2 to get water. He comes across Jojo and gets his eye eaten out because Jojo is a psycho. Becky and Barbara are praying just to calm each other down. Becky wants the family to get back together and for her mom to forgive Combs. Jojo watches this. Then Barbara goes to get water because the 2 cops couldn't. Jojo whacks her head against the wall, knocks her out. Here's where the incest pedophilia part comes in. Becky gets nabbed by Jojo. Jojo doesn't know that they're related. Jojo wouldn't care anyways. He doesn't even know what that crap means because of his perfect upbringing by his loving mom. Barbara gets back up and chases after, grabs a knife, then gets scared by the body of the first cop that was getting water. It hard cuts to Combs being abused at the cop shop because the main cop in this movie, has a kid with the hooker that died, and they have a little bit of an altercation, and Combs gets whacked. They take the cop away. That lets Combs be able to get the nightstick that he just got hit with, and he knocks out the cop and escapes and is trying to get back to the castle to his family because he knows that Jojo's in there now and all he wants to do is protect his family. Then Jojo starts being creepy with Becky, but luckily Barbara finds where they are before anything too gross happens. Barbara offers herself to Jojo just to get the daughter out of there, but it's all a distraction, and she basically stabs him in the spine with a knife, and that lets them be able to escape. While they're escaping, Becky, since she's blind, accidentally knocks a vase down, and the chase is on again. And they hide in the master bedroom. Jojo gets in there, and he finds the cat of nine tails. So now he's got a chain of death and a cat of nine tails of pain. And he just freaks out and starts smacking everything with this cat of nine tails, and finally leaves. Oh, I misspoke. Now she breaks the vase, and that gets Jojo back on there. And they run to the roof, and they're cornered by Jojo, and then Combs comes up and starts fighting Jojo. We're at the end of the movie here. Good thing he has those balls because Jeffrey Combs kicks him in the nuts, smashes his head against the roof. He thinks he's knocked out or dead, but we know that he's not because it's a horror movie. And Jeffrey just gets walloped by that cat of nine tails. He just gets the crap kicked out of him for a while. He sees that Jojo's about to get to his family, so he puts the chain around his wrist, all full circle. He jumps off the roof, takes Jojo with him, sacrifices himself to save his family. He asks for forgiveness in his dying breath, and Barbara forgives him. It's pretty sad, because I know Jeffrey Combs did a bad thing, but he was not a bad guy, in my opinion, just had problems. The last shot of the movie is Jeffrey's funeral at the castle. The cop shows up with his kid, and everybody shows remorse and respect, because they all treated Jeffrey wrong, and they shouldn't have. And then we get credits. And that was Castle Freak. I probably wouldn't have picked that as my first movie if I knew about the gratuitous rape part, or the pedophilia part, but that's kind of the point of this. It's movies I don't know, so we'll see what happens when we see them. Now, the things that I would change about this movie, and it wouldn't be much of anything, that opening scene, just get a better actress to be the old lady. I mean, they could have... It kind of looked like it was a young lady they made look old. It's like, just get an old lady, man. All of these people were involved in the previous 2 movies that I talked about in the beginning of the podcast. I wish they would have used those cameras, because this looks like a full moon picture, and that is the worst part about it. It is terrible to look at sometimes. Like, I had to watch it twice just to make sure that JoJo had his dick cut off because of all the shadows and the poor quality. So a good camera, a different opening. I don't mind that pretty much all the actors weren't that good except for like the main 3. But hey, I liked it. I didn't say it was good. I think the story was all right. Didn't seem like they were throwing too much crap in that didn't make sense. Other than for an emaciated guy that has been stuck in a cage for 40 years, presumably eating rats and drinking rainwater, he's pretty well built for an emaciated guy. If they would have got a skinnier actor for the role, it would have made more sense. But he does walk really creepy and stuff, and his face is all messed up once you finally get to see it. Because for the most of the movie, he's got a sheet over his head with blood everywhere because he only knows how to bite things. I'd say if you can forgive it for those things like I did, it's definitely worth a watch. And don't let this one, if you don't like it, make you not want to see Reanimator and From Beyond, because those look much better and they have better effects. But that's episode 1, pretty much done. The next movie that we're going to do for next Sunday is Turbo Kid, which I don't know if it's actually horror, but it's on Shudder. And I heard about it. I think it's like a throwback to the 80s. It's like a post-apocalyptic bike movie, I think. It's got Michael Ironsides on it, and I always like to see him and stuff. He's got creepy eyes, and he's fun to watch. So that's next week. The opening music and the ending music of this episode, all episodes, custom stuff, check the description. He does good work. He works with you. It was a fun experience getting that music down. Anyways, this has been Brian from Nausea Reviews. Have a good week, and I'll talk to you next time.